even when you get married, there's like your life just changes. Your capacity changes. A part of your identity changes. And both of them are experiencing that.
Yeah.
But even in my conversations, like with young adults, and you talk about like having kids, there really is this fear of like, you lose yourself and you lose like your ability to like see friends or like, and I don't think it has to be like that. I mean, I definitely don't think it has to be like that, but it is just funny how like my circles, the way that, you know, people, young adults are talking about parenting is it does feel like a loss in a lot of ways. Like you feel like it's inevitable that you're losing a part of yourself.
Hey everyone, she's Madeline.
And he's Ryan.
And this is The Roots That Last podcast,
where parents will have the opportunity to share their experiences, their expertise, and their wisdom in creating a lasting faith in their families.
Absolutely. So tell us what we have cooking for this episode.
We have cooking our very own Ryan Bean is going to share
Who
today.
invited that guy?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it was a good decision.
Pastor
We'll have to
Ryan.
see. Pastor Ryan.
Oh.
We're going to be talking about exploring identity and purpose as a parent and as God's beloved. And I am very excited about today's episode. I've gotten the privilege of working under you for the past year, and I have gained so much respect for you. Truly, I love working under you. I love being on your team. So I'm excited just to get to hear more from you. And you always put on your parent hat sometimes when we're doing the ministry thing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to get to put on your parent hat.
Let you guys know what it's going to be like.
Right, fully.
Yes. And I will say that I absolutely love working with you and the family team. It's like truly one of the best things that happened to me in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Such a gift. So feelings mutual.
Great. Well, let's get into today's episode. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's kind of exciting that you're switching out of the host role and into the interviewee role.
The interviewee seat.
How does it feel? Does it feel different?
It does feel different.
Is it pressure? Like, is the pressure on?
I think so. I think it's easier to ask the questions.
Right. I think it is too.
Than to have answers.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah.
How you got here to Ecclesia as a podcast host sometimes?
Yeah, so I've been in ministry for a while. Started in campus ministry a long time ago at Pepperdine, go Waves. And for a while worked in the nonprofit world. I've done connections and small groups ministry, and then been on staff here at Ecclesia for a few years now, most recently as the community pastor for families, which is just, like I said, I love our team. I love the work that we get to do, working with kids and students and parents and families. Like, it's just been like an amazing season of life and ministry. So I really enjoy that. From a more, just the family side of it, I'm a proud member of Team Bean. So there's 5 of us, my amazing wife, Katie, and then we have 3 kids that are 12, 9, and 7. So we're just like, we're in it. It's like,
they're so fun. You have fun kids.
It's like, I always say like, these are the days, like these are like the best days. You got to savor it.
So obviously today we're talking about exploring identity and purpose as a parent and what that looks like to believe that you are God's beloved as well. So I guess my first question would be, what is the biggest challenge or common struggle that you think parents face in balancing being a parent and also being a person? Yeah.
So I loved that question because I think it really gets to the heart of that just I always say like parenting's the assignment of my lifetime. Like it's just huge and massive, and it feels like this weighty responsibility. And I think in life, there's a lot of things where people are saying like, oh, it's never going to be the same, or this is life changing and there's a big shift. And a lot of those I was like, they're maybe exaggerating, but like parenting's the one where you're like, oh, okay. Like it really does all change when you become a parent. And I think everybody who is in it like has to try to figure that balance out. And I think for me personally, like, it does feel so weighty just because you obviously love and care about your kids and their well-being. and who they are as humans so much. And so, like, I love you guys, I love everybody, but on my deathbed, like, I'm going to be thinking about, did I show up well as a dad for my kids? Did I guide and lead them well? Like, it feels like it matters more than anything. So it's a big thing. And then I guess just to get to the heart of your question a little bit more about balance, like, there's probably just a myth that there's ever this perfect balance between, like, your leaning into your kids and then, like, prioritizing yourself and your own spirituality and your own health. And so you're always going to be trying to find the balance. Like, you're always working towards that. And so it's just more likely that that's the case. And probably, like, parents end up on, there's an extreme you can over-identify as a parent. And so, like, that just consumes you, and it just actually becomes your identity is like, I'm a parent, and there's, like, a loss of self in that. And so I think, that would be an unhealthy side of the balance. The other extreme would be like, I'm going to prioritize myself and my goals and my career too much at the expense of my kids. And so, depending who you are, I think you could find yourself on either extreme or just, like, trying to navigate your way into the middle of that. But again, like, you just don't ever fully arrive. Like, there's going to be that push and pull constantly. So, I think what I've had to do for me, and that, people that are wise have, like, said to me, and then what I would say to people that are listening and parents that are struggling with that, is you also just have to be, like, gracious with yourself in the tough seasons and be kind to yourself, and just know that like, right now, somebody has a newborn and a toddler, and it just feels like, oh man, this is so hard. Or somebody, like, has a teenager and they're going through a difficult situation, and it's like, that's different and that's heavy. And so you can't be too hard on yourself, and you have to know that there's those times where, like, it's just not going to be perfect, and I might be a bit of a mess, or I'm not, like, finding great balance in that, but that's just, like, the normal human parenting experience. So
I obviously don't have any experience being a parent. I am a dog mom, so kind of. Not really at all, though.
Yeah, that doesn't count at all.
No, not even a little bit. So, but I do have experience being parented. And it's funny because I'm getting into the stage of life where two of my really close friends, my best friend, just got married. And neither of them have kids yet, but, like, they're beginning to think about that.
Yeah.
And it is this weird... I mean, even when you get married, there's, like, your life just changes. Your capacity changes. A part of your identity changes. And both of them are experiencing that.
Yeah.
But even in my conversations, like, with young adults, and you talk about, like, having kids, there really is this fear of, like, you lose yourself and you lose, like, your ability to, like, see friends or, like...
Yeah.
And I don't think it has to be like that. I mean, I definitely don't think it has to be like that. But it is just funny how, like, my circles, the way that, people, young adults, are talking about parenting, is it does feel like a loss in a lot of ways. Like, you feel like it's inevitable that you're losing a part of yourself, or that you're stepping into something that's just going to cost you, like that you don't get to see it as, like, something. Because I think the truth, probably, I mean, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, is that things shift, but really you get to gain something. You're gaining getting to be a parent, and you're gaining, like, just a new season of life.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's all those things. I think cost is a good word, because, like, if you don't want to, like, deny yourself or be, like, sacrificial or put others before you, then you shouldn't be a parent.
Yeah.
Because, like, that 100% is going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a change in how you spend your time, and who you're with, and, like, you're losing your autonomy or ability to just kind of turn on a dime and do whatever. Like, so that's, I think, what your friends are talking about. But it is also, like, an amazing gift and blessing, and it's full of joy and craziness and, like, tears and stress and, I mean, all of it. But, like, I wouldn't change any of it. So
Yeah. Cool. So talking more on the spiritual side of things, how have you balanced your identity as a parent with your identity as God's beloved, as a child of God?
yeah, I love that question because I think there's so many things in life where we just want to find our identity in what we do, and so that's something that I've had to think about a lot lately, not just in parenting, but in other things too. But our identity really it's never just reduced to one thing. And so it's deeper and it transcends being a parent. It's bigger than being a spouse or a sibling. It's deeper than your job. It's more than where you live. And so there is that like human tendency though to just like, I think in a parenting season, like you could sort of just feel like that's it, like that's what my identity is. And so I think it's good to like, I want to be the type of person where the foundation is deeper. So it's like my identity is exactly what you said in the question. It comes from being a child of God. Like that's my starting point. And so my identity's in the fact that Jesus loves me like deeply, and when that's your starting place, then it informs who you are as a parent or how you show up for work or how you show up for different people in your life. So whatever I'm doing, it's now like shaped by the fact that I'm a child of God. It's shaped by the fact that I just have, full contentment in Jesus' love for me. And so I don't say those things in like sort of a cliche pat answers sort of way. Like, I mean, I really think that like, that's like, when that's like the heart of who you are, then you're going to make it through the good and the bad and the ups and downs and the struggles of parenting. And being a child of God just sets the tone for like you were saying, it's a season. So in this season for me as a parent, and it's always interesting to talk to like empty nesters or older people who can like, they can reflect back on the season that I'm in right now. Which seems wild. Like I almost can't even imagine
being
like,
out of it.
Yeah, right. Like you're so in it that you can't imagine being out of it. And so, but there will come a day when there's other shifts, there's other seasons. And so I think that's it. There's like, it's freeing and it like creates room and some grace for when we mess up as a parent, when we don't get it perfect, that like, that's actually not our identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I guess, when there have been seasons where that hasn't been present, that like that identity coming from like your belovedness. Yeah. Like what has that been like for you? Like a time, I guess, when you felt empty or that's just been lacking. And then what were like the practical ways of like finding renewing in that and coming back to that belovedness?
Yeah. So practicing our ecclesia church rhythm of being real. When I read your question, what really like just immediately came to mind was about 5 years ago, I went through a really difficult, hard time in my life. Like hands down the toughest season and most like difficult things that I had to navigate through. And so like it was one of those situations where there's like things have kind of shattered to a point where there's no just like putting the pieces back together. Yeah. The only option was to look forward and to build something new. Like there's no going back to what was, there's only forward. And so that was just one of those times where I had to like, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I wouldn't wish like the hardship or the pain or the difficulty of that. But like, I think anybody that goes through a time like that, whatever brings it up, is that there is this opportunity for like newness and renewal and to look forward to be like a healthier version of yourself, to thrive more than you even did in the past. And so that was something that I really embraced, knowing that like it's a day-to-day thing and it's like one step at a time. But we learn and we grow from those times of emptiness and when things are really hard. A couple years ago, Ecclesia hosted Pastors, Priests, and Guides, which was, it happened just at the perfect time for me because I was in that hard season. And one of the speakers was Father Ronald Rolheiser, and he has an amazing book that people can check out. But part of what he spoke at the seminar, at the retreat, was what he calls the Paschal Mystery. And it's all about like how we, as Christians, like our Christ-likeness, we find our sense of self and purpose and meaning and like a deeper sense of that through like, if you look at Jesus' death and resurrection and then his ascension, that like we have to experience that in our own life. And not just once necessarily. I mean, I'm talking about like, for me, it was like one big one, but like, Father Rolheiser just said like, you know, you'll have a bunch of these over the course of a lifetime where you kind of have to like die to something and accept it. And when you actually get to that point of accepting it in your life is when you can rise up and when you can ascend again. And I definitely found that to be true. And those were like just words that I could really cling to and like had a lot of depth and meaning to them at the time. So as far as like what renewal looked like in a season like that, again, just that acceptance of not looking back and being stuck on the past, but trying to look forward. Because it's really all we actually have when it comes down to
it really is.
Every single day. I mean, all you have is like the present moment and like what's ahead. So acceptance of that. I had this image at one point sometimes you just like imagine things, and for whatever reason I was actually, it was probably just imagining like one of the worst things that could happen for me was just being totally alone, like not having my family, being all on my own and being really isolated. But in that moment, I felt like God kind of whispering to me, like, I'm right here with you. And that's something like that I wrote down and reminded myself like over and over again as I've gone through hard seasons, just that like, no matter what happens, I'm actually going to be okay. And I will thrive. And even if I feel like I'm, for somebody listening right now who might feel like they're at rock bottom, it's like when you know God's with you no matter what, like it's like, but I'm gonna be okay. And even though it's not amazing right now, like I'm actually gonna thrive again, and maybe even thrive more than ever. So again, I think it's just to take it to like parenting, and when it's hard, it's just like knowing that there's personal growth and learning. There's things about yourself that you probably have to like let go of and accept, but that on the other side of that, you're like a healthier and stronger version of you. So
I love everything that you just said. I really do, because I think it's obviously applicable for parents, but I think it's so applicable just for like followers of Jesus, like people that
absolutely
want to walk with Jesus.
It doesn't just apply to parenting. I mean, it can really apply to anything.
And that like idea of like being content and not letting your circumstances define you. It's so funny how often that comes up with students, because students feel like also that they like, I think we all are like this, but teenagers more so. The season that you're in is like everything, and it's all encompassing, and the drama at school and the friendships. It's just like, this is absolutely everything I
remember
have.
in high school, which was in Canada, it was 3 years, not 4 years like I was here, but it was just like, I remember like midway just feeling like this is forever. Like
No,
it just
it
feels
does.
like
Yeah.
you're just in it and it's never going
Right,
to end.
right.
And it was 3 years, you know,
Yeah.
at my age, you can look back and it's like, man, it's just like a
Yeah.
little blip. But
And-
at the time,
It feels
like
like,
you're
and we
saying,
laugh because like when
Yeah,
you're out of it,
yeah,
like
yeah.
you're like, oh, that I can't believe that I was like crying over a bad grade,
Sure.
like in one
Yeah.
class, or like
Yeah.
over some boy that I was
Yeah.
talking to for like 2 weeks. Like you're just like, what in the world?
Sure.
But it's funny how often this like we're reading through the parables right now, and this idea of like building your house, building your worth and your trust and your foundation on something that's everlasting and something that's able to withstand.
Yeah.
Like, you know, last week we talked about, or we haven't talked about this yet, but at some point we will. I don't think we're there yet. But we talked about like doubt and your children like going through doubt.
Yes.
And it's like being able to go through those seasons and trust that, like I loved what Rochelle and Sean said, that God loves your children even more than you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's
that
huge.
takes off of this, like,
Yeah.
I'm not being a good parent, or I'm like not doing enough. Just that they're, and for you, that like, there's a God that loves you so much. Like he loves your kids and he loves you. And that's
Yes.
what this is.
Yeah.
That's what holds us, like, just as Christians, to life, to anything. That's our basis.
Yeah.
I just thought there's so
Yeah.
much wisdom in everything that you just said.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'd be curious, like, what were the practical steps that you do or that you've done to prioritize your spiritual health, like,
Yeah.
amidst all the busyness of life and busyness
Sure.
of having kids?
Yeah. I think that as parents, like you have to put effort into prioritizing mental, physical, spiritual health. And there's just going to be times where that feels so hard to do. But like, you just gotta like come back to that and know like, no, okay, I'm going to be so much better off
Yeah.
when I do prioritize these things. And I think for me, it was also like just accepting that when you're parenting, that those things are going to happen in different ways and not, you know, I'm not going to do them exactly the same way as I did when I didn't have kids. So on the practical side, like something that's helpful for me is like, you have to schedule that on your calendar. I have to put it on my calendar just like anything else. So since I'm a pastor and I'm off on Fridays, like that's something that's on my calendar every Friday is like, what am I going to do for self-care as a spiritual practice? Is it meeting up with somebody for like a conversation or connection, or is it prioritizing rest, you know, that day while my kids are at school? So, cause just like so many things, like you can say like, I need to do that, or I should do that. Or like, you know, it just gets crazy with kids and schedules. And I remember, especially when it was so hard for me, was, years ago, Katie was a bedside nurse. And so, and for a while she even did night shifts. And so when we had like little babies, it was just, we were like constantly like switching on and off, like who had the kids.
Yeah.
And sometimes she would do multiple shifts back to back. And so like I'd work all week, but then it was like, oh, cause she had a weekend requirement. So now she's got to work like Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And so, I mean, those 3 days just felt like forever for me. Cause it's like, yeah, I've got the kids on my own. And then when she comes home, she's just asleep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like those times when like it feels so hard to prioritize it. And I guess I'm just saying that to empathize with people who are maybe going through like a similar season of like, you are going to make it through it. And there are those stretches where it's just really hard. But I think that was a time for me when I really learned like, oh, like it can get heavy and hard, and like you can feel like really fried and burnt out. You know, in a season like I described. So it's so important to prioritize it. And so part of that for me was like simplifying what those things look like. So an example I would give is like I more recently just have prioritized like times of quiet and mindfulness by just going on a walk. Like I actually remember talking with a friend about this struggle that you're talking about, like how to prioritize it. And he was like, what if you just walked, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can walk.
And you walk with no AirPods, right?
Yeah. So, and that
I remember you telling me that and me being like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Cause what I found was, even when I first started walking, which just to be honest, at first it sounded really lame to me. Cause
that's honestly I'm like, that's awesome.
Like
for you.
I've totally, I mean, I played hockey, like I was into snowboarding, like I was been into CrossFit for years. And so, you know, but at the time, like just it made sense where it was like, start with something and start with something that like matters and is meaningful. And even my doctor, he like asked me if I exercise, and I was like, I'm struggling with that right now. And then I was like, well, I walk like, you know, 4 times a week, like 2 miles each time.
Yeah.
With my dog. And he's like, well, walking's exercise. And I was like, oh yeah, it is. Like I was like too hard on myself because I'm like,
not counting it.
I wasn't even counting it as exercise, but he was like, no, like that's actually
exercise.
So again, like simplifying it. But my rule was, because I found that I would just like get my phone out and it's like, I'm going to check my calendar or like my bank account because our mortgage payments due, or like, you know, what do we have this weekend, or texting, or, you know, oh, I got an Instagram notification. So, and then even if I put like AirPods in, then I'm just like, was really focused on whatever I was listening to. So, I just tried like putting the phone away and not listening to anything. And that's kind of my rule, where it's like, I'm going to walk and just be outside with my dog and hear the wind and, you know, leaves rustling or birds or whatever. Yeah. And that's like a really meaningful time for me. That's rejuvenating, but for me, it was like, oh, this is simplifying like what it looks like to prioritize some things. Another thing that a spiritual director said to me a while ago, when I was in kind of one of those harder seasons where kids were like really little, was just to try different forms of spiritual practices to shake it up. Like, so that's something practical I would encourage people to do, is like try something different, because we tend to default to like, I got to do my daily Bible reading or like my prayer and journal time. And some of those things felt like routine, or I was like forcing myself to do it, and it wasn't actually like that life-giving, and then you're just not doing it. And then some people, you know, if you grew up in a more like guilt-based sort of tradition, then you like feel bad that you're not doing it. And she was like, hey, like your spirituality right now in this moment, it's okay if it's different, and there might be different practices that you want to try. So that was, for me, it was super life-giving and like such a shift, because I started to learn about things like practice of examine, like where you just, you know, every day, like you're kind of having a running list of things you're grateful for. Yeah. And then it was fun to reflect back on it. Like a month later, it's like, man, look at all these things that I did in my examine time, and all the things I said I was grateful for in that moment that you kind of move on from and forget, but to read them again was like, whoa, like my life is amazing. I do have so much to be grateful for. Things like Lectio Divina and Visio Divina, those were really new for me. I didn't know what those words meant, and it was like somebody had to teach me. But not too long ago, I helped lead an ecclesia small group in Sugar Land, and I remember a night where we did a Visio Divina, and it was just like being together with people, but just doing something totally different that wasn't like a habit for me. And Visio Divina is just where you like look at a picture or a painting or a photo, and then have some time where you're like reflecting on it and what God's saying to you in that, and then sharing. But, and I'm also like an artsy kind of visual person. So I think I just connected with that in a different way. And so, trying things like that, like Ecclesia organizes silent retreats, which those sounds great. Wild. Like, they're so great. They're
amazing. I had the same thing where I was like, oh my gosh, should it be silent for like what? A whole day? You end up being like, this is the best. I should have done this like years ago. This is amazing.
So, you know, I'd encourage parents that are like, just, you know, I think we offer them quarterly or something, but every time I do it, I have to like it's never a convenient day. I really have to like force myself to get there.
Yeah.
Even when I first get there, I'm like frazzled because it's like I had to get the kids to school and I had to get ready and I had to fight traffic and I start and all the, voices and noise and chatters in my head. But then like there's this moment in it where like everything just kind of chills. And whether you're like just walking around the Ruhr Center or going through the labyrinth or going to the art room or in a rocking chair in the amazing cathedral, like that was just something that brought like just a great time of renewal. So I try to honestly like force myself to do one of those at least like once or twice a year.
Yeah. I would recommend.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And I've talked to a lot of people who are just like, being silent sounds awful. Like I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I get it. Like I'm the same way.
Yeah.
But once I do it,
Trust.
it really is one of those things where you're like,
Just try it,
afterwards, I'm so glad I did it.
Yes.
So, yeah. So those are some of the spiritual practices. Another thing I thought of was, it took me a while to learn this as a parent, but like, you just can't do everything. And so to actually say no.
Especially not with 3 kids that are like quite close in age.
Yeah. I mean, there's 5 of us. Like, and Katie and I have careers and there's like church life and school life and our friends and our family. And then all 3 of their activities. And, it's probably only been in the last few years where I just got a lot more. Other people maybe don't have this issue, but like, for me, it was like, probably being extroverted, maybe like people pleasing tendencies, or it's just like saying yes to things that I like felt totally drained by doing, or it wasn't life-giving at all. Or so there's like putting my no hat on more and being like, it's okay to say no to things and I can't do everything. And sometimes
it's a hard one.
We're just not going to do it, or we can't make it, or like it sounds fun, but I've had a really busy week and we have this other thing, and so I'm going to intentionally like carve out some space where we're just going to be at home and like not be anywhere. And so I think like we all have like the rat race in life, but like when I look at like our suburban life and all the activities and things that everybody in my neighborhood has going on, it's like we don't have a problem. There's nobody's like a lack of things to do.
Yeah, seriously.
So like just, and it was like a friend who taught like me of, I think there was a time where like I was invited to like go to an event and there's a lot of people there, and like everything in me was just saying like, I don't feel up for this right now, but I wanted to like, and cause I'm gregarious and fun and usually like want to be around groups. And so it's like, I kind of forced myself to do it. And then afterwards was just like, I don't feel good. I'm cooked. And like, why did I do that to myself? And so I've kind of learned to listen internally a little more, to be like, this is probably a time when it's okay to just to not do it. And you'll probably be grateful that you didn't. So,
you talked a little bit about like your neighborhood community, but what has like having a community or an inner circle church community, what has that role played in helping you feel like supported and seen, and for other parents too?
I really like how you said inner circle, because I think that a lot of us have acquaintances and like good people in our life, and even people that you can like do stuff with and hang around, but like they're not necessarily like inner circle people. And for me and Katie, it was challenging. We moved from Dallas to Houston, and right when we were having babies. And so it like the fact that you move and then you're having to like get to know new people and make friends and connections, like, and you're in like little kid season, like it's a lot harder. So that was something where like I think at some point I realized like I just don't have an inner circle. I don't have like a tighter, smaller group of people that I can really be myself with, that I don't feel judged, that like being around them, it's like energizing and I don't feel like I'm performing in any way. So I think like every parent needs to prioritize, whether it's like, I wanted to have a couple like close friends that are guys, but also like couple friends that me and Katie could get to know and hang out with. And then, you know, it's probably not everybody in your family, like everybody's family dynamic is different. But you kind of have to find your people like that really are part of your inner circle that, are like a positive voice in your head when you need it, that have your back, that they're like a fan and a champion of like you and your family, like in your kids and your marriage. Like, cause when you're in those hard times, like they can be, one, you can just be real with them and they can listen and hold space for that for you. But they can also like, when that, for me, when like that negative internal voice is going on, like I need that inner circle to be the positive, encouraging voice. I think just what's hard about that is like we talked earlier about like the shift just in life and in the season of being parenting. And so what everybody knows later in life is that the easiest time to have an inner circle and have close friends is when you're like in high school and college or early in your career before you get married and have kids and all that. Like it just happens more organically. And so I think what my encouragement to people is like to actually stick with it. And but to also like, you have to like try to foster it and try to help make it happen.
It's like one of the things to like put in your calendar to like prioritize is like,
And like, so because you can't just like have a close friend without like putting some effort
doing
into
anything,
that, you know? But knowing that it's gonna probably take longer and take time, or people tend to come in and out of your life more frequently, you know, in adult years. And so I can say now, like we've been in the Houston area for 12 years and I really do feel like I have that inner circle. I do have that tight knit community. But it took a while to get there. So I think that's something I've thought of a lot, just as you and I have been talking, is I know there's parents that are, you know, if they feel like something's missing in any of these areas we've been talking about. Like I remember when it was that way for me, like, and you hear somebody say, well, you just have to prioritize, you know, fill in the blank. It's kind of like, oh, come on. Like, don't you know how hard it really is for me? And it's like, no, like you're right. It is hard right now, but like, stick with it and you'll get there. So
I'm just struck, I think, by how much of what you said feels so applicable for like even me. Like I feel like I'm walking away with like, this is like versatile wisdom, which I just really like, because I think I'm assuming that for parents, this was all really valuable, but for anybody that's listening, that's not a parent, or even just for myself, like I feel really encouraged. I feel like there's just a lot of wisdom in what you said. So I'm glad that we made you a podcast guest.
Me too.
Because
this is fun.
This proved my point that Ryan has good things to say. So
who knew?
I know. Would have never thought.
I'm as surprised as you are.
But seriously, thank you so much for sharing, and thanks for switching into the interviewee seat.
It was fun to sit on this side of the table, so to speak, and I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thanks. So if you'd like to hear more of our conversations just like this, you can follow us on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to be there. We release episodes on the first Wednesday of every month, so make sure that you're looking out for us then. A big thank you again to Ryan for this week's episode, and we will see you next time.